Welcome to the League of Women Voters, Zooming with the Alderman series of interviews. My name is Barbara Gehring. Founded 101 years ago, the League is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences the public through education and advocacy. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our efforts to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us here in Chicago. And today our guest is Alderman Matt O'Shea of the 19th Ward. Welcome, Alderman O'Shea. We appreciate your taking the time to be with us. You should know that this Zoom session is being recorded. It'll be available for viewing after today on the website. The alderman and everyone who has registered for this, who's not a League member, will be getting a link to the video when it becomes available. And everyone should know that we have provided the questions I'll be asking to the alderman ahead of time. So before starting on our questions, we are going to look at a map of all 50 wards of Chicago. You could put that up on the screen. And we're going to scroll down to the 19th Ward, which you can see. So there's the cursor. And then we're going to see the map of just Ward 19, if you could scroll through that as well. All right. Yes. Okay. And I am going to, while that's up on the screen, Alderman, I wonder if you could describe your ward, where it is, what are the main boundaries, and what neighborhoods it includes?
Happy to. The 19th Ward is in the southwest corner of the city. Our northern boundary is the Dan Ryan Forest Preserve. Our western boundary is the city limits. We are in the corner of the city. Evergreen Park, Oak Lawn, Alsip, Marina Park are our borders to the west. Our southern border, again, the city limits, the city of Blue Island. To our east, typically our border runs along Vincennes Avenue on the southern end, and Beverly Avenue on the northern end. We are home to the neighborhoods of Beverly, Morgan Park, and Mount Greenwood. The entirety of the 19th Ward has existed in the 19th Ward for 99 years. Back in 1923, when the city readjusted and added wards, the 19th Ward was created. Obviously, back then, we were significantly larger, certainly to the east and the north, but the entirety of Beverly and Morgan Park and Mount Greenwood, as it currently exists, has been in the ward since 1923 for 99 years. I'm happy to represent a very integrated community. I'm proud to say that our community has been integrated for more than 60 years. And the racial makeup of the 19th Ward is about 67% white, 26% Black, 6% Hispanic, and then a little bit of everything else. So that of the many things I'm proud of our community, it's our diversity. So that is who we are in the southwest corner of the city. You can't go any further south or further west.
I do have one question. I think we saw it more on the overall map than on the specific ward map, but there is a rectangle in the middle of the ward, not in city. And I think there'll be a lot of curiosity about that. Can you just briefly tell us about that?
Sure. That small half-mile by quarter-mile rectangle you see literally in the center of the 19th Ward, that is the Mount Greenwood Cemetery, which has existed since the mid-1800s, before much of the 19th Ward was annexed into the city of Chicago. Mount Greenwood, our westernmost neighborhood, was a village separate of the city and annexed in, as was Beverly Morgan Park by early settlers in the late 1800s. So that is unincorporated Cook County. That is a private cemetery owned by the Everett family, who have had it for 4 generations. I know that cemetery well because I walk through it frequently.
There is a lot of history in your ward, I know. And that's just a little fascinating sidelight that we're sure people would be curious about. In terms of the makeup of your ward, is there residential, commercial, industrial? What kind of uses, land uses are there in your ward, principally?
Typically, the overwhelming majority of our housing stock is single-family homes. Certainly along the Rock Island Metro line, which traverses all the way through our community from 91st Street all the way to 119th along the Vincennes Ridge there. There is thousands of apartment units there and spread out throughout the community, but primarily we are single-family homes. Very little industrial. We do have several commercial corridors, 95th Street, Western Avenue, 111th Street, 103rd Street, Kedzie Avenue, and then we have a couple small pockets along like 99th and Walden Parkway, 103rd Longwood Drive, but primarily residential, primarily single-family home.
And what are a few key issues facing the people of your ward right now?
I would say the most important issue right now is an issue facing every community in our city, and that's public safety. Historically, the 19th Ward is one of the safest communities in the city as far as reported and documented crime. But the last 2 years has been very challenging. Just in January alone, these first 3 weeks, we've had 4 carjackings in the 19th Ward. We've gone entire years without carjackings. We've seen a significant increase in armed robberies. People are scared. People are afraid to go out at night. Each and every day I come into the office responding to concerns from people who are, saying, I'm afraid to have my children walk the street. That has never, ever been a problem in the 19th Ward. But what we've seen is such a significant uptick in violent crime in our city. That is the most alarming and the most pressing issue. A second issue I would say would be our continuing battle through this horrible pandemic. We're now 22 months into it, and the damage that we've seen, that we've incurred, and what I'm really concerned about moving forward, the losses as far as mental health, our children receiving the proper education, the lack of development, socialization, for all they've been through, on what, in my opinion, much of could have been avoided if only people would have done what they needed to do from the onset, protect themselves, staying home early on, and wearing a mask, and now certainly in the past year, getting themselves vaccinated. But the COVID-19 pandemic has been crippling to everybody, but we've seen it here in our community, particularly with our senior citizens and our young children, who effectively have missed, many of them, 2 years of their education, 2 years of their development. So those are the two most troubling issues that our community is facing, but I don't think that's any different from any other community.
Mm-hmm. And you've been in the city council for a while. When did you first join city council?
I first ran for alderman back in 2011. So I'm in my 3rd term.
Mm-hmm. And when you last ran for alderman, that would be 2019. What impelled you to continue to run for this job?
I was born and raised in this community. My parents bought a house in Beverly. My mom was pregnant and they needed a bigger house. And they bought a house on 90th and Levitt, a house that my family lived in for almost 50 years. Born and raised here, always truly appreciated the fact that my parents decided to put the stakes down here and raise our family. I wanted my children to have the same experience I had, to grow up in a community where neighbors know one another, look out for one another, support one another. And so I made a decision many years ago to put myself out there as someone who was willing to serve the community. And I still enjoy the job, although certainly the past 2 years have brought additional challenges. But I still think there's work to be done. There's still a lot of improvement. And as long as I believe that I can make a positive difference, I can work to make our community better, safer, stronger, then I'll continue to want to serve.
Now, do you have any other employment, or are you only an alderman?
No, this is my single employment. I truly believe if you're going to do this job and do it right and do it well, this needs to be a full-time job. Certainly, there are some folks on the city council that have secondary jobs, but serving in the 19th ward, the people of this community, you need to have full attention on this.
Got it. And are you a chair or vice chair of any of the city council committees?
I chair the Committee on Aviation, representing the council in issues pertaining to O'Hare International Airport and Midway International Airport. And I also serve as vice chair of the Committee on Rules.
Would you tell us a little bit about what kind of matters come before the Aviation Committee?
Sure. Any contracts or any change in legislation as it pertains to the two international airports in the city, and those are our, certainly O'Hare is our biggest economic engine citywide. So as the airports move forward, the city moves forward. And like everything, the past 2 years has been crippling to the airline industry. And what we've seen is revenues significantly drop that the airport brings to the city. One thing that has been beneficial is cargo. O'Hare International Airport has more cargo in and out than any other airport in North America. So that has helped, combating the losses we've seen as far as airline travel. When we talk about airline travel, that's tourism. That's people in hotels, that's people in restaurants, that's people spending money in our small businesses across the city. And during the pandemic, through much of it, we've seen not dormant, but significant reduction. And that's also jobs. Tens of thousands of Chicagoans are employed at our two international airports. Many of those jobs were significantly reduced, or we had many businesses within the airport were shuttered for months at a time during the worst of the pandemic. So that's also been crippling. But my job in that role is to work with the Department of Aviation, Commissioner Jamie Rhee, on any issue pertaining to the airports that the city council would need to have a vote on or to discuss. And as I said, it's been challenging, but I really enjoy the work.
Yeah, important work. And the Rules Committee, could you maybe explain just briefly a little bit about what the Rules Committee does and who the chairman is that you work with as vice chair?
So the Rules Committee was a committee that no one really knew much about or no one paid attention to, except when you have a remap process, which is every 10 years, and we're right in the middle of right now. My colleague, Alderman Michelle Harris, is the chairman of that committee. And for the past 11 months, once we got the full census numbers in, we began meeting in small groups with colleagues, trying to work together on coming to some sort of an agreement on what the Chicago 50 ward map should look like moving forward. As I'm sure you've read, it's had its challenges. We continue to have, in fact, we have a hearing on it tomorrow, which I believe is our 14th hearing, public hearing on this topic. I'm hopeful that we can get there and come to an agreement on the remap. If we cannot, it will go to a referendum, which will be on the ballot in the June election.
Let me just circle back to where you were talking about some of the key issues facing the people of your ward, and specifically the issue of violence, which of course we're all, of which we're very much aware. Are there actions that have been taken by the city to reduce gun violence that you think either have been effective or have the potential to be effective in the future?
I guess the best way of answering that, on any level in government, anywhere, not enough is being done. It's obvious to everyone that criminals in the commission of their crimes have absolutely no fear of being held accountable. We had an 11-year-old committed carjacking in my ward 8 weeks ago. An 11-year-old held a gun. So let's just look at that for a minute. That 11-year-old lives in a home with a family. What is going on that child is out and about committing gun crimes? And what is going on in that home for that to be happening? That should be concerning to everybody. On Christmas Eve in Beverly, a senior citizen was a victim of a carjacking from an 18-year-old with a machine gun. Merry Christmas. Gun violence is completely out of control, and everybody needs to do more. And part of the problem we see is that in addition to criminals having absolutely no fear of being held accountable for their crimes, a gun offender is back out on the street typically in a matter of hours. Gun offenders, people who commit crimes with guns, need to be incarcerated, period. That is the only way we can stop this. And the penalties for carrying guns, the penalties for committing gun crimes need to be stronger. In the city of Chicago today, January 20th, 2022, we have 1,300 less Chicago police officers than we did 2 years ago today on January 20th of 2020. 1,300 less. Think about that. And moving forward, when you look at the people who are willing to take the test, to sign up, to even attempt to become a Chicago police officer, we used to have thousands at a time apply. Now we're lucky if we get a couple hundred. We have done such a disservice to law enforcement in this country the past 2 years that people are retiring early and knowing no one is signing up to do the job, which is alarming. And I'm not going to sit here and say that all policemen are good. There are bad apples. Having said that, we need to partner with the police. We need to support the police if we ever want to turn this thing around and get this pendulum swinging back the other way, because people are afraid to live in this city.
I appreciate your comments on this. And if the league wanted to support any of your initiatives, if you were thinking of initiatives either in that connection or any other connection. This is just a procedural question. If the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, what steps would you recommend that the league take? For example, asking members to call or write alder people, or sending written comments from the league to the appropriate committee members or members of the city council. Just thinking in terms of procedure, in terms of supporting or gaining traction on some of these issues.
I always think it's best to email. If I email you or if I send you a letter, you can always say, oh, the postal service must have lost that. But if I email you, there is something that forever in time is documented. So I think it's important that people email. You want to have it in writing. You want to get an email form, and you can always copy others. But I think it's important that elected officials hear from their constituents. I think elected officials, it's important that they hear from people on legislative issues, whether you agree or whether you don't agree. Because, I think there's times where people get in their own little bubble of what they feel is the right position to take, the right way to support legislation, and they don't always hear from opposite sides, or they don't hear all points. There's always something that an adverse effect of something, or something maybe you didn't take into consideration. And if someone is supportive of you, it's important that you communicate with them so that you can help them spread the word, and maybe they can help you get other people who want to support that effort.
And then just circling back to the council itself, are there any changes that you would like to see made in the operation of the council itself?
One thing I'd like to see is if people could just be a little kinder. The past 2 years has been very stressful. It's well documented. There's been some ugly dust-ups in council chambers between members of the council who disagree on issues. I think a lot of that is driven by the pandemic and what has occurred. I think everybody's mental health has been affected these past 2 years. But I would say that, there's an old adage, it's okay to disagree. Mm-hmm. You just can't be disagreeable. And the level of frustration with all that's going on in the city, I wish that we could just take a deep breath and work out our differences. That's probably been the most frustrating for me. And I've been guilty of it myself. You're frustrated with the circumstances we have, and you're trying to come up with solutions to make things better or to solve a problem. And sometimes our emotions get the best of us.
Good comment. Finally, what are several things that you would like to get done, or at least get started, during the remainder of your term? There's one more year before elections in 2023. So just giving thought to the coming year, what are your goals? What do you want to have started, finished, in process during the next year?
Well, one of the things that I've been working on, and I kind of touched on it earlier when we talked about young children and their losses academically, socially, emotionally, which is the most important time in their brain development and just developing outside the household. I think it's important that we strongly reinvest in our early childhood programs. And I've been working with the Chicago Public Schools to try to expand that in my community, offering more programs for early childhood development, that preschool through kindergarten time. And over the past, I don't know, year and a half, we have a wonderful school here in our community called Barbara Vick Early Childhood Development Center. One of the finest programs in the city. I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls I get from people saying, I'd love to have this in my community. How did you get it done? Well, it's my predecessor got it done 21 years ago. But what I would like to see is to expand what Barbara Vick brings to the community, to have more locations. So I've been working with Chicago Public Schools and trying to identify available space that we could offer early childhood, expand it so that more kids have that opportunity. Because as I said, these kids who, what they've experienced, I mean, and all our kids have, you know, I have kids in high school and college, and, you know, their losses but I think the most damaging is going to be our young children. And I just want to focus on trying to correct that and expand that and make that better.
All right. That's a wonderful way to end, Alderman. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Barbara.
This is a reminder to everyone watching that a link for this program will be found on the Chicago League's website. Everyone who registered for today's program who's not a League member is going to get an email to the link, along with an invitation to join the League, of course, and sign up for notices of future programs. And next week, again on Thursday, February 10 at 6 p.m., we hope you will register to join us for our Zooming with the Alderman program featuring Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez of the 33rd Ward. So thanks again, Alderman. This has been a wonderful interview.
Thank you, Barbara. Thanks, ladies. You guys have a good day. Stay warm and be safe.
Thank you.